All right, so the last story here. Rubio says Maduro is not the president of Venezuela. Another one here from Kyle Anzalone, who's been putting out a lot of stories lately. So Secretary of State Marco Rubio declared that the Venezuelan government is illegitimate in a shot at Maduro, the president of Venezuela. Rubio wrote on X, quote, Maduro is not the president of Venezuela and his regime is not the legitimate government. Maduro is the head of the Cartel de los Soles, a narco-terror organization which has taken possession of the country, and he is under indictment for pushing drugs into the U.S., end quote. That's kind of the narrative, is that Maduro is the head of a cartel. I don't know what kind of evidence, if any, that they really have for that. For Marco Rubio, regime change in Venezuela has always been kind of a pet project for him. If you remember, back in 2019, when the U.S. the first Trump administration, really tried to do a regime change there, and they recognized Juan Guaido as the interim president, Marco Rubio tweeted out a picture of Gaddafi the moment before he was brutally murdered, as a threat to Maduro. So this is the kind of guy that Marco Rubio is. But this is kind of a signal that we could see some sort of escalation with Venezuela. Ultimately, similar with Syria, the sanctions themselves are like a regime change policy. And because if you looked at the sanctions with Syria, the justification, the narrative was always that these sanctions are so Syria cannot rebuild until there's political change in Damascus or something, essentially regime change. And it's kind of the same thing with Venezuela. Like, they're keeping all the sanctions on. They don't recognize Maduro as the government. So you never know what kind of things could be going on behind the scenes when it comes to intelligence ops and stuff inside Venezuela.